The Great Council chamber was silent. Ambassador Han Sol stood in the center of the massive room, surrounded by representatives from dozens of alien species. Above her, the ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into darkness. Around her, the council members sat on floating platforms that glowed with soft light. Han Sol took a deep breath. She knew this moment would come eventually. For months, the Galactic Council had been asking the same question over and over. Why wouldn't humans fight? Why wouldn't they join the war against the Void Swarm? The swarm was destroying colonies, killing millions, and moving closer to the heart of civilized space every day. The Vectorian War Prime shifted on his platform. His scales rattled with impatience. Krelvax had fought in hundreds of battles. His people were warriors born and raised for combat. He could not understand why humans, with all their advanced technology and large fleets, refused to use their full power. "Explain yourself, human," Krelvax said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "Your people have weapons we have never seen. Your ships move faster than ours. Your technology surpasses most species in this council, yet you send only defensive support. You refuse to fight. Are you cowards?" A ripple of movement went through the chamber. Some aliens nodded in agreement. Others remained still, waiting to hear what Han Sol would say. Han Sol looked up at the War Prime. She did not look angry or afraid. Instead, her face showed something that made several council members uncomfortable. She looked sad. Deeply, terribly sad. "We are not cowards," Han Sol said quietly. Her voice carried through the chamber despite its softness. "But before I explain why we will not fight your war, you must understand what war means to humanity. You must see what we have seen. You must know what we have done." She raised her hand and the lights in the chamber dimmed. Holographic displays appeared all around the room. The alien council members leaned forward to see what the human would show them. The first images were old, ancient even by human standards. They showed Earth, the human homeworld, in its early years of civilization. Han Sol showed them wars fought with primitive weapons, swords and arrows, then guns and cannons. The aliens watched with mild interest. Every species had similar histories. Then the images changed. Nuclear explosions bloomed across the displays. Cities vanished in blinding light. The radiation counters in the holograms climbed to levels that made several aliens gasp. Entire populations disappeared. The planet itself seemed to scream in pain. "This was just the beginning," Han Sol said. "This was when we first learned that we could destroy ourselves completely. We almost did. We came very close to making our own world uninhabitable, but we survived. We learned. We thought we had learned enough." The holograms shifted again. Now they showed biological warfare, engineered diseases that targeted specific genetic markers, weapons that could wipe out entire species while leaving others untouched. The council members saw humans dying in massive numbers. They saw the desperate attempts to create cures, which only led to more dangerous diseases. The lumen shard representative, a being made of living crystal, pulsed with a sickly yellow light. "We have seen such horrors in our own histories," Prism 7 said. "This is terrible but not unique. Many species have weapons of mass destruction." Han Sol turned to face the crystalline being. "Yes," she agreed. "Many species reach this level. They learn to destroy their own worlds. Some survive this period. Some do not. But humanity," she paused. "Humanity went much, much further." The holograms changed once more. Now they showed star charts. Dates appeared at the top of each display. The years read 2287 to 2391. Over a century of human history. "This is the period we call the Forgotten Time," Han Sol said. "Every human knows these dates. Every human child learns them in school. But very few people, even among humans, know what actually happened during these years." She entered a series of codes into her control pad. 3 other humans in the chamber did the same. Their positions formed a triangle around Han Sol. All 4 codes had to be entered at the exact same moment. It was a security measure that ensured no single human could access these records alone. The displays flickered. Warning symbols appeared in dozens of languages. Then the images began to play. At first, the aliens did not understand what they were seeing. The battles looked strange. Ships appeared and disappeared. Entire fleets seemed to exist in multiple places at once. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist around the human vessels. "These are records from the Unification Wars," Han Sol explained. "During this time, humanity was divided into several factions. We fought each other for control of our colonies, our resources, our future.
But this was not a normal war.
We had discovered something new. Something terrible. She pointed to one of the displays. It showed a human scientist named Tae Yang. He sat in a small room speaking to a camera. His eyes looked empty, as if he had seen things that had broken something inside him. We learned to weaponize quantum mechanics, Tae Yang said in the recording. His voice was flat, emotionless. We learned to manipulate probability itself. We created weapons that did not just destroy enemy ships. They erased them from history. They made it so those ships had never existed at all. The council chamber erupted in noise. Aliens shouted in their various languages. Some demanded that the recording be stopped. Others wanted to see more. Krelvax raised his massive clawed hand for silence. Explain this, he commanded. How can something be erased from history? What does this mean? Hansol took a deep breath. It means exactly what it sounds like. Imagine you have an enemy fleet. 1,000 ships. You fire your weapon. The ships disappear. But they do not just explode or get destroyed. They cease to have ever been built. The resources used to make them return to their original state. The crews return to their homes having never joined the military. Only certain people remember that the fleet ever existed, and even those memories become fuzzy and uncertain. She let that sink in for a moment before continuing. Now imagine both sides have these weapons. Imagine they use them against each other. What happens? The chamber was silent again. The aliens were beginning to understand. Reality itself begins to break down, Hansol said softly. Cause and effect become meaningless. People remember things that never happened. They forget things that did happen. The universe starts to fracture under the weight of so many contradictions. She showed them more images. These were harder to look at. They showed humans who existed in multiple states at once. Cities that were both destroyed and intact. Events that happened in different orders depending on who was observing them. This is what war became for us, Hansol said. This is what we did to ourselves. And this is only the beginning of the story. What I am about to show you next. She paused, gathering her strength. What comes next is why humanity will never ever unleash its full military power again. Not for you. Not for ourselves. Not for anyone. The holograms dimmed, preparing to show the next part of humanity's dark history. The aliens waited, some in fear, others in morbid curiosity. None of them would leave the chamber the same as they entered. Hansel knew this. She had seen these records before, and they still haunted her dreams. She pressed the button to continue the presentation. The real horror was about to begin. The holographic displays filled the council chamber with new images. These recordings were labeled with dates from the middle of the forgotten time. The year 2334 appeared at the top of the main screen. Hansol stood quietly, letting the records speak for themselves. A woman appeared in the hologram. She wore the uniform of a human engineer, though it was torn and stained. Her name tag read Jiwoo. She looked directly at the camera with eyes that seemed too old for her young face. I am Engineer First Class Jiwoo, she said in the recording. I am making this testimony for the historical record, though I doubt anyone will ever see it. If you are watching this, it means humanity survived what we are about to do. I am sorry. I'm so sorry. Jiwoo's hand shook as she held up a datapad. My team has developed what we call a causality weapon. It does not work like the probability erasure weapons. Those merely remove things from history. Our weapon is worse. Much worse. It can change the fundamental laws of cause and effect in a localized area of space. The camera followed Jiwoo as she walked through a laboratory. Other humans worked at stations, their faces showing the same haunted expression. They knew what they were building. They knew what it would do. But the war demanded it. When this weapon fires, Jiwoo continued, it creates a bubble of altered reality. Inside this bubble, effects can happen before their causes. Time flows backward, forward, and sideways all at once. Any ship caught in this bubble experiences every possible version of its own destruction simultaneously. She stopped at a window that looked out into space. But that is not the worst part. The worst part is what happens when two of these weapons are used at the same time in the same area. The bubbles interact. They create what we call a cascade failure of causality. The recording jumped forward. Now it showed Jiwoo's face filling the screen. She was crying. We did it. Both sides fired causality weapons at the Battle of Proxima. The cascade has begun. We estimate that a sphere of space 20 light-years in diameter will be affected. That includes Earth, That includes our home? Hansol paused the recording. She looked around at the alien council members. Their faces showed confusion and horror in equal measure. The Cascade event nearly destroyed humanity, Hansol said. Not just killed us. Destroyed us in a way that is hard to explain. Let me show you what the survivors experienced. A new recording began. This one showed a woman named Haijin. She was much older than Jiwoo, with gray hair and deep lines on her face. But according to the date stamp, this recording was made only 2 years after Jiwoo's testimony. Haijin had aged decades in just 2 years. My name is Heejin, the woman said slowly, as if each word was difficult. I am a researcher studying the psychological effects of the Cascade event. I am also a survivor of the event. I will try to explain what it feels like, though I am not sure I can. She closed her eyes. I remember having a daughter named Subin. I remember her birth. I remember raising her. I remember her laugh. But I also remember never having children. I remember both versions with equal clarity. I remember Subin dying in the war. I also remember her surviving and becoming a scientist. I remember her being erased from history by a probability weapon. All of these memories exist in my mind at the same time. Hyejin opened her eyes. They were wet with tears. Now multiply this by every person I have ever known, every place I have ever been, every choice I have ever made. I remember thousands of different versions of my own life. I do not know which one is real. I'm not sure any of them are real. The recording showed Hyejin standing before a massive wall. Names covered every centimeter of its surface. Millions and millions of names. This is the remembrance wall, Hyejin said. These are the names of people who existed before the Cascade event, but do not exist now. Or perhaps they do exist, but in a different timeline. We do not know. We remember them, but we have no proof they were ever real. 40% of humanity's population is on this wall. She touched one of the names gently. This is my daughter, Subin. I know I loved her. I know she existed. But there is no record of her birth, no photos, no documents, nothing. Just my memories and the memories of others who knew her, or think they knew her. The Chiric's ambassador, Zukthar, made a clicking sound that indicated distress. How did your species survive this? He asked. How is anyone sane after experiencing such trauma? Hansol stopped the recording again. Most were not sane, she admitted. The years following the Cascade event were the darkest in human history. Millions took their own lives, unable to cope with fractured memories and broken reality. Others lost their minds completely. They existed in a state of constant confusion, unable to tell what was real and what was memory from an erased timeline. She brought up new images. These showed human cities in ruins. But these were not ruins from warfare. These were ruins from neglect and despair. Buildings stood empty. Streets were abandoned. The humans who remained alive wandered like ghosts. We nearly became extinct, Hansol said. Not from the war itself, but from the aftermath. We had broken reality so badly that we broke ourselves in the process. A new recording began. This one showed a man in a military uniform. His name was Kyung-soo, and he held the rank of commander. He stood on the bridge of a ship addressing his crew. Attention all personnel, Kyung-soo said. His voice was strong, but his eyes showed deep sadness. We have been given our orders. We are to take all remaining weapons of causality disruption, probability erasure, and temporal manipulation beyond the galactic rim. We will not return. Our exile is permanent. The camera panned across the bridge. Every crew member stood at attention. They all knew what this meant. They were saying goodbye to Earth forever. We do this, Kyung-soo continued, so that future generations will never have to know the horror we have created. We carry this burden so they can live in peace. We are the last warriors of the old humanity. When we leave, the age of reality-breaking warfare ends. The recording showed a massive fleet of ships, hundreds of vessels all loaded with weapons and data, all crewed by volunteers who had agreed to exile themselves forever. Our children will never know us, Kyung-soo said. Our grandchildren will think we are myths. History will record us as criminals who created terrible weapons. Let them think this. Let them hate us. As long as they never follow in our footsteps, we will have succeeded. The fleet began to move. The ships accelerated toward the edge of known space. The recording captured Kyung-soo's final message to Earth. Forgive us for what we learned. Never seek to follow. We will watch from the darkness. If you ever need us, we will know. But pray that you never need us, because our return would mean the galaxy is ending. The ships disappeared into the void beyond the rim. The recording ended. Han Sol let the silence stretch for a long moment. The alien council members sat quietly, absorbing what they had seen. Some looked shaken. Others looked thoughtful. All of them looked at Han Sol with new understanding. "This is why we will not fight your war with our full power," Han Sol said. "Not because we are afraid of the enemy. We are afraid of ourselves. We are afraid of what we become when we truly commit to warfare." The Lumenshard representative pulsed with a soft blue light. "But surely," Prism 7 said, "those weapons are gone now. Your commander Kyung-Soo took them away. You cannot use them even if you wanted to." Han Sol shook her head slowly. "The weapons are gone, yes, but the knowledge remains. It exists in the minds of our scientists. It exists in our databases, locked behind security measures but still present. Most importantly, it exists in our genes." She brought up a final image. This one showed a DNA sequence with strange markers highlighted in red. "Every human alive today carries genetic markers from the Cascade event," Han Sol explained. "These markers affect our brains in subtle ways. We have dreams of lives we never lived. We have memories that do not match any recorded history. We are all, in some small way, fractured beings living in a stabilized reality that we nearly destroyed." A young woman appeared in the hologram. Her name was Mi-sun, and she looked no more than 20 years old. She spoke directly to the camera. "I am a third-generation survivor," Mi-sun said. "I was born 60 years after the Cascade event. I never lived through it. But I carry its mark in my DNA. Sometimes I dream that I am someone else. Sometimes I remember events that never happened to me. The doctors say this is normal for humans now. We all have these ghost memories. We have all been touched by the broken timeline, even those of us who were born after it was repaired." Han Sol closed the display. She looked at each council member in turn. "This is our inheritance. This is what war gave humanity. We do not shun combat because we are weak or afraid. We shun it because we know exactly where it leads. We know what we are capable of. And we have chosen as a species to never go down that path again." The council chamber remained quiet after Han Sol finished showing the genetic evidence. The weight of human history hung heavy in the air. But the presentation was not over. Han Sol knew the aliens needed to understand more than just what happened. They needed to understand the cost of fixing it. "The weapons were gone," Han Sol said, breaking the silence. "Commander Kyung-Soo and his fleet had taken them into exile. But humanity was broken. We existed in a state of constant pain, our minds fractured by contradictory memories. The question became, how do we heal from this?" She activated a new series of displays. These showed the peace accords of 2391. The documents were signed by every surviving human faction. The signatures numbered in the thousands, representing millions of people who had agreed to a single unified goal. The peace accords were not just about ending the war, Han Sol explained. They were about ensuring it could never happen again. But this required something unprecedented. We had to deliberately destroy our own knowledge. We had to make ourselves forget. A man appeared in the hologram. He looked young but carried himself with authority. His name was Young-ho, and his title read Chief Technology Officer of the Restoration Project. "My team has been given an impossible task," Young-ho said in the recording. He stood in a laboratory filled with computers and data storage devices. "We must find every piece of information related to causality weapons, probability erasure, and temporal manipulation. Then we must destroy it, but not completely. We must leave enough information so that future generations understand what we did, but not enough to recreate it." He picked up a data crystal. This crystal contains the complete mathematical framework for probability erasure weapons. With this information, any species with advanced enough technology could build these weapons within a few years. My job is to break this knowledge into pieces, to remove key equations, to corrupt crucial data, to ensure that even if someone tries to rebuild the weapons, they will fail. Young-ho's face showed the strain of his work. But here's the difficult part. If we simply delete all the information, we might accidentally trigger automated systems that have backups. We might miss hidden copies. Instead, we must go through every database, every computer, every storage device in human space, and manually edit the information. It will take decades. It will require the cooperation of millions of scientists, and it must be perfect. One mistake, one missed copy, and the knowledge survives. The recording jumped forward several years. Young-ho looked older now, more tired, but his eyes showed satisfaction. "We have completed the first phase," he said. All direct instructions for building reality-breaking weapons have been removed or corrupted. But we have discovered something troubling. The knowledge exists in multiple forms. It exists in academic papers that do not directly discuss weapons, but contain the theoretical framework. It exists in physics textbooks that explain the underlying principles. It exists in the minds of thousands of scientists who worked on these projects. He paused, collecting his thoughts. This brings us to phase 2. We must alter our own educational system. We must identify which areas of physics and mathematics lead naturally to weapons development. Then we must create barriers, dead ends, false assumptions that seem correct but lead nowhere. We must poison our own well of knowledge. Han Sol stopped the recording. She looked at the alien council members. This is what we did. We deliberately made ourselves less intelligent. We identified certain branches of scientific inquiry and made them impossible to pursue, not through laws or restrictions, but through corrupted data and false information. Any scientist who tries to go down these paths will hit walls that seem insurmountable. The Victorian War Prime leaned forward on his platform. You made yourselves weaker, Krelvac said. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. Yes, Han Sol agreed. We chose to be weaker rather than risk becoming monsters again. A new recording began. This one showed a woman named Hei Wan. She wore the uniform of a military doctor. She stood in what looked like a hospital, but the patients in the beds behind her were not injured in traditional ways. I am Dr. Hei Wan, she said to the camera. I work with the Memory Reconciliation Project. Our patients are humans who lived through the Cascade event. They suffer from what we call timeline fracture syndrome. Their minds contain memories from multiple versions of reality, and they cannot distinguish between them. She walked through the ward. The camera followed. In the beds, humans of various ages lay quietly. Some stared at nothing. Others muttered to themselves. All of them looked lost. Traditional medicine cannot help these patients, Hei Wan explained. Their problem is not physical. It is not even psychological in the normal sense. Their brains function perfectly. The issue is that their memories are real. They remember things that did happen, just in timelines that no longer exist. She stopped at one bed. An elderly man lay there, his eyes open but unfocused. This is Jae Sung, Hei Wan said gently. He remembers being married to 3 different women. He remembers having children with each of them. He remembers all 3 versions of his life with perfect clarity. All 3 sets of memories are equally real to him. He has spent the last 15 years trying to figure out which version is the true one. We have told him that all 3 are true in a sense, but this does not help him. The old man suddenly focused on the camera. Where is my wife? He asked. His voice was thin and confused. Which one? They are all waiting for me. I need to go home. But I do not know which home. I do not know which life is mine. Hei Wan took his hand gently. Rest, Jae Sung. We will help you. The recording moved to show Hei Wan in her office. She sat behind a desk looking exhausted. We have 17 million patients in facilities like mine across human space, she said. This is 17 million people who will never fully recover. They will live out their lives in confusion and pain. This is the price we paid for the Cascade event. This is what we did to ourselves. Han Sol let the recording end. She took a moment before speaking again. The peace accords included provisions for these survivors. We built hospitals. We trained doctors. We dedicated enormous resources to caring for those who were broken by the war. This continues to this day. We still have facilities caring for the last survivors of that time. She brought up another display. This one showed financial records. The numbers were staggering. Humanity spends 15% of its total economic output on Cascade-related care and prevention, Han Sol said. Medical care for survivors. Mental health services for descendants like Misun, who carry genetic markers. Research into preventing similar catastrophes. Education programs to ensure everyone understands why we must never use such weapons again. 15%. Every year, for over 300 years. The Chiric's ambassador clicked his mandibles in surprise. This is an enormous burden, Zikthar said. Your economy must suffer greatly. Yes, Han Sol agreed. But we consider it necessary. It is a constant reminder of what we did. It ensures that every generation of humans knows the cost of reality-breaking warfare. We choose to carry this burden forever. A new recording appeared. This one showed a ceremony. Thousands of humans stood in neat rows, all wearing identical gray uniforms. At the front, a woman read names from a long list. After each name, the assembled crowd responded in unison. "We remember." "This is the annual remembrance ceremony," Han Sol explained. "It occurs on every human world on the same day. We read the names of those who were lost in the Cascade event. All 40% of our population who ceased to exist. It takes 72 hours to read all the names. Everyone stops their normal activities to listen and remember." The camera focused on individual faces in the crowd. Young and old, military and civilian, all of them standing in silence listening to the names of people who might never have existed. "This is how we ensure we never forget," Han Sol said quietly. "This is how we maintain our commitment to peace. Not through laws or treaties, but through constant remembrance of what we lost." She showed one final recording. This was different from the others. It was a classroom. Young human children, no more than 6 or 7 years old, sat at desks. A teacher stood at the front. "Today," the teacher said gently, "we are going to learn about the forgotten time. I know you have all heard about it from your parents, but now you are old enough to begin understanding what really happened." The teacher activated a simple hologram. It showed Earth whole and beautiful. "This is our home world," she said. "Long ago, our ancestors made a terrible mistake. They thought they could use science to win wars. They were very smart, and they created weapons that were too powerful. These weapons broke reality itself. Many people died. Many more were hurt in ways that cannot be healed." A small boy raised his hand. "Teacher, why did they make such weapons?" The teacher smiled sadly. "Because they were afraid. Because they thought the other side was worse. Because they believed winning the war was more important than anything else. They were wrong. There is nothing more important than ensuring we never break reality again." The children listened intently. Even at their young age, they understood the seriousness of the lesson. "You will carry this knowledge with you forever," the teacher continued. Why Humans Shun War, Part 0 for HFY Story Outline, Third-Person Narrative. Part 1. The Ambassador's Revelation. The Galactic Council Chamber falls silent as Ambassador. Han Sol prepares to address the assembled alien representatives. The various species, the reptilian Vectorians, the crystalline Lumen Shards, and the insectoid Chirix, have demanded answers about humanity's refusal to join their military coalition against the expanding Void Swarm. Han Sol stands before the Council's central platform, her dark eyes reflecting centuries of human memory. Behind her, holographic displays show peaceful human colonies, thriving trade routes, and diplomatic outposts. The alien delegates grow impatient, unable to comprehend why such a technologically advanced species refuses to mobilize for war. She begins by showing them recordings from Earth's history, images that make the Council members recoil. The ancient wars, the nuclear devastation, the bioweapon plagues. But these are just the opening notes of humanity's dark symphony. Han Sol's voice remains steady as she explains that these were merely humanity's infancy in warfare. The Vectorian war prime, Krelvax, interrupts with aggressive clicks of his mandibles. His species has fought wars for millennia, but never has he seen such primitive brutality. Han Sol's response chills the chamber. "Those were our children's games. Let me show you what happened when we truly learned to wage war." Part 2. The Forgotten Centuries. Han Sol activates the restricted historical archives, requiring 3 separate human authorization codes. What appears next are records from the 23rd and 24th centuries, the period mysteriously absent from all public human databases. The hologram shifts to show the Unification Wars, conflicts fought not on planetary surfaces but across dimensions and timelines. Physicist soldier Tae Yang, one of the war's architects, appears in recorded testimony. His haunted expression tells more than his words as he describes weapons that could erase entire bloodlines from history, retroactively unmaking civilizations before they ever existed. The Council watches in growing horror as footage shows reality itself fracturing around human battle fleets. The humans had learned to weaponize quantum uncertainty, turning probability itself into a weapon. Enemy fleets wouldn't just be destroyed, they would cease to have ever existed, leaving only ghost memories in the minds of witnesses. But the true nightmare was the Cascade event. Engineer Jiwoo's logs describe the moment when 2 human factions deployed causality weapons simultaneously. The resulting paradox nearly collapsed the local space-time continuum, threatening to erase not just Earth but a sphere of space 20 light-years in diameter. Han Sol pauses, letting the weight of revelation settle. The Chiric's ambassador, Zikthar, asks the obvious question: how did humanity survive? The answer, Han Sol explains, required something far more difficult than developing such weapons. It required learning to unmake them and seal away the knowledge forever. Part 3. The Price of Peace. The hologram shifts to show the aftermath. Researcher Hyojin appears in the records, her face aged beyond her years as she stands before the remembrance wall. She explains the psychological toll of the wars. Entire generations of humans who remembered multiple contradictory timelines, whose loved ones simultaneously existed and had never existed. The peace accords of 2391 didn't just end the wars, they required humanity to actively suppress its own technological development. Scientists like Young Ho were tasked with creating failsafes, ensuring that certain discoveries could never be replicated. Mathematical proofs were deliberately incomplete. Physics equations had crucial variables permanently redacted from all databases. Most shocking to the Alien Council is the revelation of the volunteers. Thousands of humans, including military commander Kyung-soo and his entire fleet, agreed to exile themselves beyond the galactic rim. They carried with them all remaining weapons of catastrophic potential and the complete knowledge of their creation. These exiles would ensure that even if future humans forgot why certain technologies were forbidden, the weapons themselves would remain beyond reach. Han Sol shows footage of the departure, vast ships carrying the sum of humanity's most terrible achievements into the void. Families said goodbye forever. Kyung-soo's final message to Earth was simple: we carry this burden so you never have to. Forgive us for what we learned. Never seek to follow. The Victorian War Prime, his previous aggression diminished, asks about the survivors. Han Sol explains that over 40% of humanity's population had been erased from causality during the wars. The survivors bore genetic markers of timeline fractures. They could remember people who never existed, events that never occurred. Every human alive today carries this inheritance of fractured reality in their DNA. Part 4. The warning. Han Sol's presentation reaches its critical conclusion. She explains that humanity doesn't shun war out of moral superiority or cowardice. They shun it because they know exactly where it leads. The aliens believe they understand warfare, but they've never truly tested the limits of military innovation when survival is at stake. Security Officer Bo-Ra, appearing via live transmission from the human enclave, delivers a demonstration that sends ripples of fear through the council. She activates a device that creates a small contained temporal anomaly. For exactly 3.7 seconds, the council chamber exists in a state of quantum superposition. Every delegate experiences millions of possible outcomes simultaneously. Their own deaths, victories, defeats, alternate versions of themselves making different choices. When normal time resumes, several alien delegates collapse. The experience of perceiving all possible states of existence simultaneously has overwhelmed their neural systems. Bo-Ra's point is made. This was a toy, a minor curiosity created by a graduate student before the technology was banned. Actual causality weapons were exponentially more devastating. Han Sol then addresses the Void Swarm threat directly. She acknowledges that it's a genuine crisis, but unleashing humanity's full military potential would pose a greater danger than the swarm itself. Once certain weapons are deployed, they cannot be contained. Once certain knowledge spreads, it cannot be forgotten. Diplomat Jin-A, specializing in threat assessment, presents alternative solutions. Humanity will contribute defensive technologies, evacuation support, and strategic planning. They will share conventional weapons far superior to anything the Galactic Council currently possesses. But they will not, under any circumstances, cross the threshold into reality-altering warfare. The presentation concludes with a sobering thought exercise. Han Sol asks the Council to consider, what if the Void Swarm developed causality weapons? What if this conflict escalated to dimensional warfare? The answer is clear. The entire galaxy would be at risk, not just from the swarm, but from the conflict itself. Part 5. The Choice. The council chamber erupts into heated debate following Han Sol's presentation. The Lumen Shards, being crystalline entities with perfect memory, understand the danger immediately. Their representative, Prism 7, supports humanity's position. But the more militant species see only cowardice disguised as wisdom. War Prime Krelvax makes an impassioned argument. His people are dying. Colonies are falling. The Void Swarm advances daily. How can humanity with such power choose to remain passive? His frustration echoes throughout the chamber. Surely weapons that no longer exist cannot be a threat. Han Sol's response is delivered by Commander Dong Hyun, a military strategist who arrives with a small escort. He carries with him a sealed container, its contents hidden behind multiple security fields. He explains that this contains a single equation, not a weapon, but a mathematical proof that would make developing causality weapons trivial for any species with sufficient computational power. The container will be destroyed. Dong Hyun states unless the Council unanimously votes to force humanity's hand. If even one species demands that humanity mobilize its forbidden arsenal, he will release this equation to the entire Galactic Council. Then they will all bear the burden of knowledge and the inevitable consequences. The chamber falls silent. The alien delegates realize they're being given a choice: trust humanity's experience or force them to share the curse of knowledge. Scientist Mi Sun, the youngest human delegate present, adds a personal note. She explains that her grandmother existed in 3 separate timelines before the peace accords, and the reconciliation process drove her mad. Mi Sun herself carries genetic markers that cause vivid dreams of lives she never lived, decisions she never made. The Chiric's ambassador breaks the silence with a question. What guarantee does humanity offer that they'll help defend against the Void Swarm without using their forbidden weapons? Han Sol's answer is direct. They offer their word backed by 3 centuries of peace. Humanity has not fought a war since the Accords. They've had provocations, threats, even attacks on outlying colonies. They've responded with diplomacy, evacuation, and conventional defense. Never once have they reached for the weapons in exile. The vote is called. One by one, the alien species choose trust or force. The Lumen Shards vote for trust. The Chirics, after long deliberation, vote for trust. Even the Vectorians, despite their warrior culture, ultimately vote for trust. War Prime Krelvax delivers the final vote personally, stating that any species willing to exile their own warriors and seal away their greatest weapons has proven their commitment to peace more than any treaty.